What we've seen in Florida, and unlike many other states, just like we're seeing in other states around the country, where third-party groups, activist groups, are coming and they're creating resource guides for school districts to use to teach certain subjects, all of them relating to gender and teaching sexuality. And one of the things that really surprised me, that was as young as kindergarten, there were resource guides out there telling teachers, telling educators how to talk to children about their pronouns and how to have discussions about, well, can I use the pronoun that I use at school when I talk to your parents? Or do I have to use a different name? All these really confusing things to teach, to try to pull out of little children. So really, it was those resource guides. The first one I saw was in Palm Beach County, and then found out that just right close by to my district in Alachua County, there was one. And throughout the state of Florida, they started to come forward, Broward County, Miami-Dade, and so on. As our bill started to get in the news, we had more and more people reaching out and saying, our county has one just like this. And that was probably the scariest part, because these guides were not being voted on in public meetings. These guides were being put forth with an agenda by activist groups, and they're directly teaching and instructing teachers how to instruct children, and almost bypassing the typical role that you would have with approval process that would go through the State Board of Education. They figured out a way to bypass it with an activist agenda.
You know, you had this up close and personal seat to watch the development of this parental rights and education bill from start to finish. So why don't you trace that for me?
Originally, this bill was going to be targeting these guides that we talked about a little bit, that there was these transition guides and this idea that we're teaching teachers how to teach sexuality to little children, and we've got to address this. But then I came, to my attention that in Leon County and in Martin County, there were these transition questionnaires that were being put forward, and it was given to students. If you got questions about your pronoun, here, and one of the things it said was, do you want your parents to be involved in helping you basically transition from in our school as a he to a she, or however you want to do it? And so the original bill was about targeting this idea that I don't want anybody in the school district having closed door meetings with my children. I don't want them signing a document that the minor child is making decisions for themselves in school without the parents involved. And that's where it originally, that's what started with. And then as I became aware of other issues where we had gender theory being taught in kindergarten and second grade classes in different school districts, and we knew we had to address that, so we added that into the bill. So the bill got filed kind of right at the deadline as we worked through the details of everything that needed to be in it. And then the bill gets its first hearing in the Education Committee, and at that point when the media narrative just took off. And I think it was really early on. I saw it. I got on my actually it didn't go on my desk. It went on all my neighbors around me's desk in the Capitol. So if you're not familiar with the Florida Capitol, the way our offices are, the freshmen are in the tower, and I'm up on the 11th floor, and all my colleagues that are my freshman colleagues are getting these pamphlets dropped off at their desk that basically says, like, help us stop the Don't Say Gay bill. This bill is targeting trans children, all these just rhetoric. And it was the first introduction to the many lies that the left was putting out. And it was by one of these organizations that's frankly using these issues like this to make money on it. But one of the things that I made a comment to one of my colleagues that sits on it was actually a Rep Lamarca out of Broward County. I made a comment to him that he was on the committee, and I said, they never came and talked to me. This Florida Equality Group never requested a meeting with me, and I'm hearing that they've met with 12 Republicans that are on this 18-member committee. And it was my first kind of glimpse into how dirty and how low these groups will go to spin up a narrative. And what they did was they purposely didn't talk to me because they wanted me to be in the dark of what their tactics were. So I get in front of committee, and that committee just kind of went off the rails. I mean, it was all about hypotheticals and rhetoric, and this is targeting gay children and all these different things that we've heard throughout. And no matter how many times you would give them an answer, back to the bill, this bill's really simple, here's what it says, they would just keep spinning it up. So in many ways, we were losing the messaging war on this bill, not because our message was not good, but because we didn't have the power of the media. The left at this point, I think it was the day after, maybe the day of the first committee, had Anderson Cooper, had Chase the Buttigieg on to talk about this bill. I mean, national figures immediately talking about this bill from the left's perspective, and almost no perspective, nothing from our side. And it was pretty early on, the governor got asked about the bill at a press conference, and he made a comment, something to the effect of, we'll go back and look into this bill. And it was just a few days later, he got asked about it again. At this point, he had reviewed it. So he took that opportunity to really expose the media for using terms like "don't say gay" because it was clickbait and it sold well on social media, and that's why they used terms like that. But it really, he on a national level was able to expose so much of what their rhetoric was. And then it made the left really double down. It was really at that point that it became a fever, really a fever pitch. We had over 300 students from Dade, Broward County coming to the Capitol, and their tactics. I told this to one of my colleagues. I said that if parents have not woken up already to what's happening in our schools, the footage of these children in our Capitol is a wake-up call. And watching children cuss, F this, and telling us that, we're bigoted and we're all these things are really nasty and aggressive. And right behind them are educators from those school districts, Democrat lawmakers dancing, supporting, going along with it as if this is okay for little 15, 16, I'm sorry if I'm old to call 15, 16 years old children, but they're children, they are minors. And there they are in our Capitol with adult lawmakers dancing and going along with it. That was a wake-up call, I believe, to really what took on a fever pitch all across the country from conservatives, and not just conservatives, from centrists. I believe the majority of Americans realizing that what is happening in our schools, targeting our children, trying to indoctrinate our children, enough is enough. It was really an unbelievable time to really kind of, I believe, start to reverse the course that we've seen happen for way too long in our school system.
Lay out what's in the bill.
The bill does really three fundamental things. It says that parents should be the decision makers. Any decision that's made in a school district that has a physical or emotional or mental impact on the student's well-being must involve the parent. It's pretty straightforward. That could have to do with issues that have nothing to do with their sexuality. Could have to do with the way their grades are reported. Could have to do with which coursework they're taking. But if it has a long-term impact on the student, engage the parent. Pretty straightforward. Then we said that in kindergarten through third grade, because there was a gap in our state standards where we did not address this, gender ideology and sexual orientation shouldn't be taught in kindergarten through third grade. So that was the second. But the third piece was probably what really is the motivator behind the left being so fired up. As we said, there has to be an enforcement piece. Because just like we saw with lockdowns, just like we saw through the time of COVID in our school districts that chose to not follow the governor's executive orders, chose to not follow the rules the legislator put out. We said there has to be an enforcement piece. We said that if a school district is withholding information from you about your child, so like in the case of Leon County where you had a 12 or 13, I think she was 12 when it started, 12-year-old child having closed-door meetings with the school district and school officials and blocking out the parent, and then the parent goes, what was in that meeting? Could I see, what did she sign? I'd like to have that. And the school district goes, oh, no, that's confidential. Well, so our bill directly goes at that and says, no, you can't withhold, you can't have a private meeting with my child and close the door and then tell me that I have no right to that information.